All right, take us through what unfolded up on the Gold Coast today, Jimmy.
Yeah, cracking finish to this game, Tom, and I think we kept waiting for Essendon to keep coming and coming. It was 11 points at three-quarter time, and it turned into a game a bit of your turn, my turn, and there was 14 inside forward 50s for both sides, and it turned into a transition game. This non-free kick, he just got his foot to it, and Langford led to a goal, and you thought, here we go, Essendon's got all of the momentum. This 50-metre penalty, the umpire didn't call stand. He looked like he was off there, Durham, but the umpire pinged, I think, who was that, Ballard there?
Right call?
I don't know. I don't know on that one. I'm not sure on this. But Long, who was one of the stars of the day with 4 goals, he's in cracking form, playing as a forward, playing as a defensive forward. He and King, great combination, 8 between them. And again, it was goal for goal throughout the game, and it was who could hold their nerve and, I guess, make the most when they're exhausted of their inside forward 50 conversion. Both kicked 5 goals, 1 for the quarter, as I mentioned. But the Suns, some tackling pressure, which will please Damien Hardwick late in the game. That was a throw from Gresham, but they got away with it, and Cox actually turns the corner really nicely and hits the goal. But as I mentioned, it was the Suns' grit around the contest that probably got them over the line. Merritt was fantastic again for the Bombers with 33 touches. Anderson, 33 with 17 contested. Matt Rowell, who just decided to run over the top of players in the end. He didn't even want to run around them. Had 26 touches and 8 clearances. But that was a 50-metre penalty here, which is a big talking point. Laverty handed the ball back to the wrong player, which was a 50. Took Miller, goes down there, slots it calmly, which puts the game out of reach for the Bombers. Good solid win for Gold Coast. It was a seesawing affair, a bit free-flowing, but a bit of grunt around the midfield for Gold Coast got them over the line.
Can we just dissect the last couple of minutes there, Lee? Because it feels like 2 or 3 times a weekend we're talking about key umpiring decisions at critical moments.
Well, the one we know that if you get one arm pinned, you're gone. And if the ball falls out of your hands in the tackle, you're gone. This one, I don't think that was a tackle. He's actually been free kicked for holding the ball because the adjudication was Took Miller tackle. I don't know whether it constitutes a tackle. The 50-metre penalty is an obvious one. The ball was thrown back to the wrong player. But we had a couple of occasions today where it looked like a grab that never became a tackle, in my view. Was decided that was enough contact to be holding the ball. I'm not quite sure where that sits in the rules and regulations, Jimmy.
Yeah, I think Fiorini pointed straight at Laverty going, you got that wrong. But I think Laverty actually generally thought it was his free kick because when he's looked up, he's staying right there. And so if we have another look at it again here, we just, as the free kick gets paid, Fiorini's sort of standing there ready, and I reckon Laverty's thinking, well, that's the closest bloke to the man.
So what should he do in that situation, Laverty?
Oh, he could wait, but players are under the pump because they've been yelled at, give the ball back, give the ball back. I think it's just a genuine, honest mistake. I don't think he was trying to slow down the game or anything like that. Lee's right, it is a free kick if you hand the ball back to the wrong player. But he's standing right next there to Caldwell, who gave away the free kick, so unfortunate.
I think that's clearly a 50-metre penalty, but I can understand what you're saying about Laverty. The Suns on transition, they were pretty lethal at times, weren't they? Yeah, their ability to get up and down the ground and hurt Essendon, especially early in the game here. This full transition flowing football, it's magnificent to watch, and this is where good sides can open you up. And they just caught Essendon out here on turnover, and it was a turnover game pretty much until the last quarter. At one stage, Gold Coast and Essendon, up until three-quarter time, pretty much kicked their whole entire score off turnover. Normally you still see 3 or 4 goals from stoppage, but this is what I was talking about. You'd have your turn taking the ball going inside forward 50, 58 entries to Essendon, 54 to Gold Coast. If you didn't make the most of it, it was going coast to coast back the other way, and we had lots of space. And look at all this space going inside forward 50, finding targets. Pretty easy to find marks inside forward 50. All right, this is the road to 13 we've been showing Lee and Jimmy. I'm intrigued to see whether the Suns can play finals for the first time in their history. They are 7-5. They need 6 of the last 11. They've got 4 more home games. Let's imagine they win all those 4, a couple against more difficult opponents in Collingwood and Melbourne. They play St Kilda away in round 13. They have North away as well. I think they can get the last 6 and play finals. But, Jimmy, I've said that before and I've been burnt before. But I'm hoping they can because I think they're good enough to do it.
Well, I think all we're waiting for is a win in Victoria, aren't we, Lee? Like we know Gold Coast are great at home. They're probably 4 goals, maybe even 5 goals better up there on the Gold Coast. We want to see what they're like down here.
Yeah, nothing new out of today. I mean, they're a great team, really good team at home. They've become that now. They're middle of the list. But to play finals, you're going to have to win a fair... Well, they're 3 or 4 maybe away from the Gold Coast. Now, that's their challenge. It always has been their challenge and still is.
All right, the biggest losing margin for Melbourne under Simon Goodwin today. A fantastic win for the Fremantle Dockers. Anyone who said that they can't score, and we've said it a few times here, were proven wrong today. 22-9, 141. The margin was 92 points. The highest score Melbourne's conceded since 2017. And it was terrible, wasn't it, from a Melbourne perspective? But Lee, I want to ask you, what were the key moments that set it up for the Fremantle Dockers? Because they played some scintillating football.
Well, they won every stat. They didn't win the hit-outs. Max Gawn still had one more hit-out, I think, but that was the only stat, and that's the most useless stat in footy, so we don't think that matters much. Every other stat, Fremantle won, and we're going to see a lot of highlights here of key moments. They're big forwards. Amos and Tracy were good. Jackson got in there, obviously, when he wasn't rucking, and he kicked goals. They kicked 10 goals between. It was a bad day for Stephen May, but he was under siege. It wasn't really his fault, but one thing we know about Melbourne, if they don't mark the ball in their back 50, they're pretty vulnerable at ground level. And certainly Fremantle, they won the contest, and then they were patient and superb with ball in hands. They spread it round the game, a little bit of angst, a little bit of unhappiness. You would be, you're 90 points or 80 points behind at three-quarter time. Life's not good. And of course, Lockie Hunter, I think, did his calf. But all in all, it was a magnificent win by the Dockers. You couldn't expect them to be any better. And conversely, when you get beaten by 90 points, it's a real bad one for Melbourne, who were on the receiving end.
Tom, you touched on Freo can move the ball and score quickly, and they've got that ability because they have a hard-running side. And you have a look at Switowski, he had 25 touches. That's that high half forward, Fredericks, but even Clark and Ryan got still a stack of the footy, but they took the game forward. They got the game up in their front half. And you look at this, scores from forward half change. So turnovers, scores from stoppage, everything in the front half was enormous today. So they have that capability, and that's where the frustration comes from, because we know they're very disciplined defensively, but they can put speed on the game. The inside forward 50 differential was 32. They had 68 today. Now, if you're a Freo forward like Tracy and Amos, you're going, where's this been? Yeah. Because, like I said, they do a lot right, but you've got to bring the game forward a lot further on the ground.
It certainly felt as if they played today like they played the last quarter against Collingwood last week. They just picked up where they left off. Melbourne, on the other hand, as we said before, really struggled. They're out of the 8 for the first time since round 18 2020. And Simon Goodwin, their coach, after the game was extremely honest about where he believed the team went wrong.
Oh, this game had nothing to do with personnel. We really need to dig into the why of the inconsistencies in our group. And that's coaches, that's everyone. We own that together, but we will dig because we need to find a way to get through it. We can't have 2 games in the last 3 and play to the level that we have in things that we value incredibly highly. Oh, look, I don't like to categorise them, but when you lose by the margin we lost by, that's unacceptable as a footy club.
All right, so if it's not personnel, Lee, then it's effort and game plan. And it was pretty troubling to watch this afternoon.
No, it's execution, Tom, and execution was poor. Nothing to do with game plan, I wouldn't have thought. I mean, basically, the Fremantle won everywhere. I mean, as I said, in the hit-outs, Max Gawn wasn't... Max was probably Melbourne's best player, but he still didn't have a great day. They just had a shocker all over the field. They won all the contest stats, the contested possessions, obviously the inside 50s, inside 50 marks, contested marks, and they had 140 marks. They just chipped the ball around when they had possession, were really patient, used it well, and just made Melbourne chase. And Melbourne were just off the pace. Now, the concern really is, I mean, they're not robots, they're flesh and blood, but today, Melbourne just didn't produce. And they've probably been okay without being great this year. And today, when you have a shocker like that, I mean, sometimes you can have the old mulligan, as we say, but gee, they were poor today.
Lee read my mind. I think Max Gawn, he is the key. But the reliance now on Max Gawn, win and lose. And no other Melbourne player has a bigger drop-off in rating between wins and losses. So Max's 3 lowest rated games this year are against Sydney, Carlton, Freo, all losses. So you've got to actually put time and effort, and it's almost a compliment to Max how important he is to this Melbourne side at the moment. You look at all these numbers in losses, it's the ability actually for Melbourne to feed off the back of the big fella's work, and he's been exceptional this year, but you've got to put time, you've got to put body contact. The difference when you watch the ruck work here, look at that, that's Darcy, he puts the arm across. So they sent Petty into the ruck, and that didn't get any better. 13 ruck contests Petty had. They lost 11-2 and 3 goals against. So you want to keep Max in there. But look at the force that Darcy puts on Max Gawn in these contests. Wheels around, bangs it forward. He even goes forward a little bit later and hits the scoreboard. just asking questions constantly of Max Gawn, trying to wear him down. And this is what I'm saying. Normally they've been a big group, Melbourne, with stars everywhere, but the reliance at the moment...
Over-reliance.
At the moment, there is an over-reliance on Max Gawn dictating the results.
So what do you do about that then? What help can he have?
Well, people have just got to lift. It's as simple
Other players have to lift.
Other players just have to raise their level of play. It can't just be solely the fact Lever's out at the moment. Everyone's got to lift because the big fella can't win every single game for you.
Now, in chats with Champion Data this afternoon... Sorry, Lee, go on.
I was going to say, I think it was interesting when I was watching Darcy, the way he was pushing his big frame into Gawn, so Gawn couldn't really reach the ball easily. Didn't it remind you of Brodie Grundy in round one?
Yeah.
So I think maybe the opposition ruckman should be learning you just can't try and outreach Max. You've got to try and get a big body in and push into him. So if at least he gets his hands to the ball, he can't dominate that hit-out area.
I think it is alarming that the two players who've dropped off most this year, according to Champion Data, are Harrison Petty and Clayton Oliver, two players that were, I guess, to varying degrees on the trade table last year. Steve May's also concerned, given how important he is in defence, and Ed Langdon on a wing, and Tom Sparrow is a premiership player. But clearly the D's aren't playing the football they want to be playing. And I'm concerned that, a bit like Brisbane, I'm not willing to say it categorically yet, that this window is not as open as it once was. Because as soon as Gawn isn't at his best, I just can't see Melbourne winning a flag. Or if Gawn gets injured, how are Melbourne going to win a flag? It's a real concern.
Well, Petty's still the victim of trying to transform his game into being a key forward. We've seen one good game, him doing it last year, one good game this year, but he's still struggling to find his rhythm on the forward line. But you could say that about a lot of Melbourne forwards this year.